Hello and welcome to today's webcast, brought to you by Penn Energy and sponsored by Dell EMC. The EMC Enterprise Content Division transforms how organizations connect information with work, whether on-premise or in the cloud. ECD technologies simplify the complexity of managing and protecting an organization's most valuable asset, information. ECD's energy and engineering solutions enable organizations to leverage their asset information throughout the asset lifecycle, from design and construction through operations and maintenance. I'm Joey Michelle Sinner, Chief Editor of Penn Energy and moderator of today's event, an opportunity for operational excellence, improving productivity and asset management for utilities. Today's presentation will be delivered by Sean Baird. Sean is the Director of Industry Marketing for Dell EMC. He leads Energy and Engineering Industry and Solution Marketing for the Information Intelligence Group. Sean has more than 15 years of software products experience, holding a variety of marketing, product management, and technical positions since joining the company in 2004. Before we begin, I want to cover a few housekeeping items. At the bottom of your audience console are multiple application widgets you can use. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can click on the Q&A widget and submit your question. We will try to answer these questions during the live Q&A portion at the end of this webcast. You can expand the slide area by clicking on the Maximize icon on the top right of the slide area or by dragging the bottom right corner to enlarge. In fact, you can expand and reposition many of the components on your screen, so please feel free to arrange as you desire to give you the optimal webcast viewing experience. If you have any technical difficulties during this webcast, please click on the Help widget. It has a question mark icon and addresses common technical issues. If you still need assistance, type your issue into the Q&A widget and a member of our webcast support team will work with you to correct the problem. A PDF of the slide deck may be downloaded via the Resource List widget that looks like a green sheet of paper at the bottom of your screen. For your convenience, this presentation will be available on demand within 24 hours of this live event. A reminder email message will be sent to all registrants with a link to the archive. It will also be accessible from our homepage at www.pennenergy.com. Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Sean Baird. Sean?
Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from today. Today's webcast, as you can see on the slides and was introduced, is about the opportunity for operational excellence. And really what we're going to do here is focus on some trends and some technologies that we believe, and we've experienced this by working with a number of customers in the industry, can really drive some significant improvements in productivity, in compliance, and in user experience, and really making it much easier for your employees to get their jobs done. So let's go ahead and get started. And the way I usually like to start this is just by talking a little bit about some of the challenges that we see our customers facing in the industry. And I think these are some of the drivers that we see that are encouraging people to invest in solutions that can improve their ability to achieve these goals. So the first one here, is around maximizing asset lifespans, and especially in North America, in Western Europe, we see real drive to extend the lifespan of existing plants, existing assets. I think we see many statistics about how few power generation plants or in other industries, oil refineries, things like this, major investment projects, how few of those have really occurred in the last 20 to 30 years. And what we're seeing is, for a variety of reasons, companies looking at plants that maybe were designed to last 30, 40 years and saying, how can we extend this investment? How can we get these plants to last 10 more years, 20 more years? And that's a pretty common situation. We see a lot of brownfield investment to to upgrade certain portions of the existing infrastructure. And we also see some investment in how can we do a better job of maintaining these plants to extend their life cycle. So on both of those fronts, I think the driver is pretty clear here that organizations are really trying to extend their existing investment and get more value out of the investment that they made several decades ago. Second major driver that we see is around the big crew change, and I think this is something that we see impacting industries across the board, and not just in the utilities industry or even in the energy industry. We see this as something that many organizations are facing. But as we look at the challenges in the energy industry, I think one of the things that we really see is a very heavy reliance upon those experienced workers that really are the backbone for your operations. These are people who have been kind of on your front lines, helping to maintain or operate your plants for decades potentially, and even newer employees that have joined your organization tend to rely upon these experienced professionals because they know how to operate the plant, how to maintain the plant, how to do their jobs. They've been doing it for years, and especially at those plants that haven't undergone major change, that experience provides a very real resource, and the loss of that experience is a significant blow to organizations. We see organizations that are investing in extension bonuses, to retention bonuses, to hold on to those employees, to keep them in the fold for even for another year, so that they have a little bit more time to educate the rest of their employees, to figure out how they're going to function with those experienced workers leaving. But it's really a problem that isn't easily solved by addressing it on a one-off basis. And certainly, offering things like retention bonuses can be quite expensive, especially for what are typically higher paid workers anyways. So I think this is a major concern for many organizations, and one that there are other solutions. And I think we'll talk about that as we go through the presentation today. And then kind of the third major challenge that we see organizations really striving to deal with is around regulatory concerns, regulatory fines, the costs of maintaining compliance with regulations, industry regulations, government regulations. And so this is certainly another major driver. How can we become more compliant or achieve compliance in a more cost-effective way? Now, before we get into talking specifically about operational excellence and kind of what the underlying core competencies are that you need to be able to achieve that, I want to talk briefly about the digital transformation and the emergence of the digital enterprise. This is something, again, that we see across all industries. And obviously, if you don't recognize the gentleman that's kind of screened out behind the text here, that's Jamie Dimon, and he is the CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase. And when talking about digital transformation, the emergence of digital technologies that are really driving significant innovation, the other impact of that innovation is a complete transformation in some cases of entire industries. And here's Jamie Dimon, who's CEO of one of the largest banks in the world, and this statement I think is really telling. He's concerned about startups from Silicon Valley changing the market dynamics, impacting his industry in a way that could have a very real, tangible impact on his very large business. And I think if we step back and look at it on across many industries, we can see that there's very real impact of the digital transformation. You see some legacy businesses on the left that have been completely usurped by more digital, new companies on the right that have completely transformed the industries that they're competing in, that have led to the downturn, if not the demise, of the companies or industries on the left-hand side. So, and this is really what Jamie Dimon is concerned about in the financial services industry, and it's what each of us need to be concerned of in our own industries about, what do we need to be paying attention to so that we don't become the next Blockbuster, the next Borders Books, the next taxi industry. And if we look at it, there's really kind of three major pillars that can potentially lead to this kind of transformation. There's people. You want to make sure that you are providing as human, as efficient experience as possible, and that could be with your customers, providing better ability for them to interact with your business, to purchase or inquire about new services that may be relevant to them, to interact with you from a customer service basis. Certainly that's one really important way that you can leverage digital technologies to take advantage of your organization or take advantage of your business. This middle one here is around just business itself. When you look inside of your business, what are the things that you might do to better connect your value chain, to add technologies that allow you to become more productive, more efficient, and improve the actual operations of your business. And then the third pillar is around information technologies and what technologies are relevant to improving your business. Is it cloud technologies? Is it analytics, big data? There are a lot of technologies here, and rather than prescribe which technologies there are, I think this is certainly an area that's worth looking at because there are certainly an emergence of many new technologies that can drive significant business efficiency for you. And if we look at that specifically for the energy industry, I think one thing that's really important to understand here is that while this is a survey of the energy industry, 88% of the businesses responded believe that their business is undergoing a digital transformation. So there's very widespread understanding that this trend is there. It's real. It's something that probably need to pay pretty close attention to. But if we look at another question in the survey, how many of you are actually doing something about it or know what to do about it? Only 25% of the respondents responded positively. So you have a very significant portion of the industry that is acknowledging that there is a transformation going on, there is something they need to pay attention to, but they really don't know what they need to do, or they don't have a plan yet of how they're going to take advantage of that. So what I want to do today is to start with just kind of three quick ideas that might be ways that you want to take a look at digital transformation and consider how you might take embark on a strategy or a transformation to take advantage of this digital transformation. The first one really is around customer engagement, and I think there's a number of ways that this can be done, but really looking at digital as a way to help sell new services, to improve the customer experience, to make it easier for your customers to work with your business. I think that is certainly an area of innovation that we see across many other industries having a dramatic impact. I think that's a big part of what led to the changing of the guard that we saw on a few slides ago. In many of those businesses that the new businesses improved the customer experience, and they delivered a level of customer experience that the older businesses either didn't or couldn't react to. I think it's important that you establish a vision of how you think digital transformation is going to drive those business changes. And I think it's really important, one thing that through my experiences in business and through, if you read, a lot about the digital transformation or about business techniques, I think it's important to take some risks here. We don't necessarily know all the answers about what the exact digital experience that our customers want to have with our businesses. But, the companies that have been successful here have done things that are completely innovative. And so I think it's important to take some of those risks, to consider some new strategies, try them out, fail fast, and if it doesn't work, then move on or come up with a different strategy. But I think that's quite important. And then the kind of final piece of this is to really look to partners to help you to achieve these goals. There certainly are organizations out there that have built technologies or have solutions that can provide better customer experience. And I think by leveraging partners who have done this before with other organizations, you can reduce the risk of trying new things, and you can you also very much shorten the amount of time it takes to achieve that. All right, second thing that I want to talk to you about real quickly today is around intelligent operations. And I think this is an area where digital transformation certainly offers a lot of promise. We certainly want to make sure all our workers are connected, that they're able to share information with one another. We want to make sure that our plant is well connected to our business system, so that we're able to monitor the status of various areas within our plants, within our business, to make sure that we fully understand how our business is performing from an infrastructure perspective. But ultimately, what we want to do is connect all the information that exists around that plant, and that's not only structured information, analytics about how individual parts are performing. You can apply, obviously, analytics to that to be able to do things like predictive maintenance. But you also want to connect all the other information, the documents that really help workers to be able to do their jobs. And really, by connecting all those different pieces of information, you're developing kind of an intelligent operations structure. And there's some significant benefits to that. Obviously, by having better data, you can then apply analytics to really understand the health of your infrastructure. So you have more of a complete, accurate view of how the plant is performing. You can again have things like predictive maintenance, have ability to quickly identify where there might be some concerns. It's going to allow you to achieve higher reliability through that analysis, and ultimately you're going to be able to optimize your maintenance to maximize your productivity throughout your operations. And so I think that there's certainly a huge opportunity for that, and I'm sure that many of you are already embarked down this path, because this is certainly one that has a significant amount of potential to offer value to. Third one I want to talk a little bit about, and I'll expand on this one a little bit more, is talking about digital asset management. And I think this is something that has been talked about in the industry for quite some time. We see, the technology here is not necessarily as new or exciting, maybe, as some of the analytics and big data capabilities that are driving improvement from an operations perspective. But as I mentioned earlier, workforce disruptions are certainly draining organizations of key experienced subject matter experts. And the big crew change is obviously a part of that. You obviously face competition to keep your workers, and we see these disruptions as having a major impact on many companies. This is a little bit more oil and gas specific, but certainly in the oil and gas industry, we're seeing some impact from the lower oil prices. But overall, because of some of the economic conditions, we're seeing shrinking margins that are forcing a new focus on operational excellence. And the point I'm going to make today, and I think it's a pretty compelling argument, is that information is really the basis for driving a lot of this operational excellence. Without good information management, without the ability to manage all your information, it's really difficult. And we see this across the entire asset lifespan, from building a new plant, designing and constructing a new plant, to operating and maintaining that plant over time. There are certainly some business objectives, and those business objectives change depending upon what phase of the lifespan of your asset you're in. At the beginning of the process, you're trying to manage your overall capital investment. You're trying to improve the time to revenue by getting those plants built more closely. quickly rather. But as you move into operations and maintenance, the dynamics change. The levers that you can pull to increase your profitability are different. You want to be able to optimize your maintenance and operations costs. So lowering those costs obviously can increase your profit, as does improving your productivity. So by improving your productivity, by reducing your costs for operations and maintenance, you're making significantly more profit for your organization. And ultimately, the other lever you have is to try to extend the asset life cycle, as we talked about before. If you can leverage that investment for another 10 years, then that's 10 more years of profit that you've been able to achieve on the investment you made in your asset. But information is really a key part of that, and it's lots of different types of information. And that information can be different, as can the people who need to access that information throughout the life cycle. So I think it's important to understand that there is a huge amount of information out there that is critical, that underlies the business processes and ultimately the success factors for your business. But if we take a step back and are really honest with ourselves, I think most organizations that I talk to have some real challenges. They still rely on paper records. Many of these plants were built decades ago, maybe even before this information was created on computers. So the fact that they exist in paper is not surprising. But what is concerning is that information hasn't been digitized, hasn't been converted into electronic information so that it can much more easily be accessed, be leveraged. Instead, it's locked away in filing cabinets that either are inaccessible or make it very difficult to find the information that people need. And that's really part of what forces a reliance upon the subject matter experts that we talked about earlier. It's too difficult to go find some piece of information, so therefore we're just going to ask. And hopefully somebody knows the answer, because that's going to be probably a quicker way to get to the answer that we need. Even organizations that have done a good job of digitizing their information, about making sure that all their information is online in business systems, often have silos of information. They've created a system or a way of working that works for their department, and that might mean that they've invested in some kind of a document management system. It could be they're using something really easy to use but very basic, like a SharePoint. It could also be just using shared drives. So they may be putting something on a network share that people know. If you go into this folder, you'll find all the standard operating procedures, or you'll find the records for a specific part or portion of an asset. But again, we see a lot of this reliance on subject matter experts that really does limit our ability to manage the overall information within an organization. And there's some real challenges. Even if you have a system in place that is managing information, there are some real challenges here. We need to be able to manage change because, although these plants might be decades old, in order to keep them running, in order to extend the asset life cycle, we need to make some changes. We need to upgrade some parts. We need to swap out with maybe a very similar but different part that has different operating procedures, that has different specifications. So being able to have a system in place that allows you to make changes to those documents, that controls those changes so that they're the right level of review and approval are in place is really important. And the second piece of that is making sure that you have a way of communicating those changes with the organization. It does no one any good if you're making changes and you're being really rigid about the way you make those changes, but those changes end up locked away in some type of siloed system that really isn't able to be leveraged by everyone in your organization. So, it's kind of a couple of real significant challenges here that are important to address. Now, if we look at information management maturity, and as we talk to our customers, we kind of describe there being kind of four phases, four levels of maturity that we certainly recommend that companies consider and have helped organizations to step through this. But it sets some good near-term goals that allow us to improve our organization without having to spend a significant amount of time to achieve these results. So it kind of starts with getting your content under control, pulling all your information together in a single system that is well organized, that doesn't have, that is available online, that it is not broken up in siloed ways that restrict information from people who really need to have access to it. So that's step one, and I think it's something that's very achievable for most organizations. There certainly are a lot of technologies out there, including ours, that can help you to get to this stage one, and it certainly has some significant value for you. But really, as you start to move up this maturity curve, that's where you start getting a lot more value. So the second step is really ensuring optimal access, making sure that your people in your organization, in the field, have the ability to get at information. And this is not only, kind of reactively getting at information. I need to find a standing operating procedure for this specific valve. Let me go try to find it. But also, proactively notifying people, maybe when there's changes that are made. So ensuring that optimal access is certainly a great next step to really focus on. I mentioned change management before, and we think that's obviously a very important step, and one that, again, I think it's represented here as a separate level of on the maturity curve, but I think this is something we see a lot of organizations focused on, is making sure they have the right change management processes in place so that when changes are made, they can be confident those changes have been well vetted and reviewed by the right level of both expertise and management to make sure that that's the right change to make. And then ultimately, we want to connect this information with the rest of your business. So making sure that the information that we're talking about here is accessible in other business systems that makes sense. And we'll talk a little bit more about this as we get through this presentation. Now, the unfortunate thing, and this is probably not surprising given where what we've seen so far, is that a majority of businesses that we see in the utilities industry and the energy industry as a whole tend to be pretty immature. They even if they as I mentioned, a lot of them continue to have legacy information. They don't even have their content under control. But, even companies that have invested in this might have all their content together, but they don't have any easy way for people to access it or to be able to manage change or complete, certainly very few have a full integration of processes and information. So let's talk a little bit about each of these steps, what's necessary to achieve them, and some of the benefits that you can receive as a result. And as we go through this, I'll have a couple of case studies to share with you of some real customers that have invested in systems that can help manage this information and have achieved some great benefits. So again, starting with content under control here, what we want to do is try to centralize as much as possible all of our information management. Remove it from the silos that exist within your organization, whether those are filing cabinets, SharePoint, shared drives, or other network servers that are storing this information, and pull it all together into one centralized information management system. And I think this has a lot of value here. It provides a single source of the truth. People know where to go to get the information. They're not hunting in several different systems, hoping that they find the information. Now, one of the challenges that customers have, or companies have had when we talk about centralizing all this information, is that the information there are different pieces of information that can come together in that type of scenario. So making sure you have the right level of security and access controls become really important. Security is important not only from a making sure that people don't get at information. I mean, I think especially in the utilities industry, especially in the nuclear industry, we see a lot of reticence to using information systems without understanding what the security profile is. So it's real important to make sure that you have the right level of security to keep people from the outside being able to get into the information. But again, as you combine a lot of this information together, I think internal security becomes something of a concern as well. So making sure you have the right level of controls to make sure that people who are in one department have access to all the types of documents they need, but maybe not some of the documents they don't need. So, that's certainly an important requirement that companies have. And ultimately, you want to make sure that you have the right level of retention and security for those records so that if there ever are any challenges, if you need to respond to a regulatory inquiry, or if you need to understand just because there was a safety incident or because some other issue arose, that you have the ability to go back and understand know what happened, why was this change made, who approved this change, and what was the rationale for it. I think that's an important capability, and one that by storing your information in a system that is controlling and managing that information, you can get at fairly easily. Kind of hand in hand with getting your information control is providing the right level of access to it. So, several different requirements here that I think are worth highlighting. First is that you want to limit access only to the effective versions of the content. So if you think about content, you might have, several changes that have been made over the years, but you have a current approved operating procedure, let's say, for a certain turbine or valve. But you have some changes that are undergoing right now. We're going to make some modifications to that operating procedure. It has not been approved yet, but we're going back and forth and collaborating on it. So if a worker in the field needs to be able to get at a version of the standard operating procedure, we need to make sure they get to the right one. It's not the original one, and it's not the latest one because that latest one has not been approved. We need to make sure we've identified the effective version and are publishing that out to people on demand. Rights management, again, I think is really important. So making sure you have access controls set so that you get people access to the information that they have. And then, I mentioned publishing that information out earlier, and I think that's really important. You need to be able to push content, whenever, wherever somebody needs that information, and that might include, consumption outside of desktop computers or laptop computers. So, mobile solutions are certainly something that are a part of this, and being able to support that requirement as it comes up. Now, if we take a look here, we've got a natural gas utility company that we've worked with that had some significant challenges. And really, we're kind of very symptomatic of what we see across the industry. They had most of their information, nearly all their information was digitized. But and in some cases, they were using a pretty enterprise class content management system to manage that information, but there was no structure to it. It was just kind of all stored in there. It wasn't really very well controlled. People could just store documents in folders where they saw fit, and it made it very difficult to find information. They had very little process involved here too, so that things like change management were very ad hoc, and ultimately no one really had trust in the system because they weren't sure what versions of content they were looking at, if that was the current version or if it had been replaced, and there was no formal process to communicate with some of the other outside companies and vendors, suppliers that they were working with. So it became very difficult for them to know which documents were the right ones to be working on at any different point, or to be able to read access if they needed to perform some type of procedure. So, they've invested in a new solution that EMC worked with them to deploy, and part of the workflow here is change management. Part of it is reporting, but they're actively using all those workflow processes. I mean, they have a pretty small company, only about 70 users who are actually using this, but they have over almost 700 active workflows that are being driven to help improve the quality of that information and make sure it's up to date and accurate. They also had a need to be able to report out to the organization in terms of how this was working for them, and the ability to automatically generate those reports was a tremendous savings to them, and they dramatically reduced their administrative tasks here, as you can see from nearly a full-time employee. Typically, they spend about 37 hours a week just monitoring the changes that were going on within the system and reporting that out. Now they can generate those reports almost immediately, and it requires very little additional manual prep. Only about 3 hours of somebody's time a week to be able to deploy that. So some really significant savings by having a system in place that allowed them to manage and report out on their information very easily. Now, continuing up the maturity curve here, kind of the next step is around management of change. And, I think what you're trying to do here is make sure that the information is completely consistent, that it's distributed appropriately, that you're doing the right things to make sure you enforce compliance. And so there's a couple of key points here. You want to certainly follow industry best practices and standards. And so you want a system that is based on industry standards and supports things like PAS 55 or the ISO 55000 standards. But you also want to take advantage, I think in most cases, of what's worked for other organizations. And so what EMC has certainly strive to do here is to take all of the best practices that we see from a number of different companies across the energy industry and pull it together in a solution that leverages really the best processes and the best practices that those companies follow. And that's ultimately what we're looking to deliver to our customers. It certainly includes a structured change management process so that you need to have the access rights to be able to initiate a change, respond to a change. You want to make sure that the right level of review is done. That review might include people both within and outside your organization. So, very, very often a change might include getting a new part from a supplier, and so you need additional information from that supplier to be able to make the changes to things like as-built specifications, engineering drawings, standard operating procedures, maybe some training documents to be able to make sure all that information is accurate. You want to make sure the right level of review and approvals are done. The right people approve those documents before they become effective, before they're published. And ultimately, you want to make sure that you're able to publish and transmit information, both to people inside and outside your organization, in as automated a fashion as possible. And we've built in some great tools to be able to do that. Now, change management can be kind of difficult, right? Because it can come from a lot of different reasons might be driving that change. Maybe you had some type of a part replacement or a safety incident or a compliance violation. There's a lot of different reasons. And so, again, lots of different documents that might need to be changed. You want to make sure that review and approval process is structured and includes everyone who needs to be included. And ultimately, once you deliver it to your organization, you want to make sure you have the right change notification, so you're alerting people that a change has occurred, and if you need to perform additional training, that those steps are also followed. So, a system that has a structured management change process can help you to make sure you're not missing anything. And there's certainly some underlying technology that's needed to make sure that happens, but ultimately, what you're delivering is a single source of truth that is reliable and that people can expect to be accurate and up to date all the time. All right, final thing I want to talk a little bit about here today is around integrating with business systems. And ultimately, whenever you talk about delivering a new system to the business, one of the major concerns that businesses have is user adoption, and certainly you don't want to make a major investment in a new system if the users are not bought in, if the users cannot be expected to leverage that. So one of the ways that we've really increased the user adoption for our systems is by not looking at our system as a new system that everyone needs to learn, but using it as an important technology that can enable people to get at information from wherever they're getting it today. So we look at existing business systems and how the information that we're managing might be accessible through those. So one quick example here is around work order management systems. So by integrating with those systems, when a maintenance or operations engineer receives a task to go change the pressure on a pump or to perform a maintenance function on a valve, that information, in addition to being given a task and told where that valve is and what operation needs to be done, you're also giving them the important documents that are going to allow them to do that job. And this is exactly the type of information that, in many cases, those people do not have access to today. They're again relying upon somebody who's experienced, that's done this before, that can tell them how to do it. or they are spending potentially hours looking for that information. So what we've done is we're able to integrate those together so that when they get the task, they automatically have all the relevant documents that they need. It allows them to leverage your existing investment in a work order management system. It certainly makes it easier and reduces the amount of training that's required to get for your engineers or for your employees to be able to access the information. And there can be a lot of benefit to it. And if we look at another example here, we have a large North American nuclear utility. Again, they were fairly well invested in enterprise content management systems, information management systems, but they built a system on their own. It was a very custom build that was making it difficult for them to change it over time, to do things like what they wanted to do about integrating it with, in this case, Inventex and some of their other ERP systems to be able to deploy the system. So they standardized on an EMC energy solution, and they're getting some pretty significant benefits. They've got over 1,000 users that are using the system now, and because of the integration with their existing business systems, they've had very high user adoption and user satisfaction with the new system, and it is driving some real value for the organization. So again, if we step back and look at what the overall requirements are for an information management system, I think there's kind of three key ones that I'm going to focus on here. One is around security. You want to make sure that information is in a system that is very easy to control, that you've got the right levels of control in there so that you're not inhibiting people from getting their jobs done, but you're providing enough structure so that that all the documents are well stored, you've got the right level of retention, the right level of a system that allows you to manage the collaboration exchange between different departments and organizations. Second thing is consistency. I think that's ultimately what you're trying to achieve here by investing in a system like this, is to make sure that your information is consistent, as accurate as possible. So you want to make sure you have good change management in there. You want to make sure that from a records management, audit trail perspective, you know why information is changing, when it's changing, and how it's changing. And ultimately, you want a system that's going to drive productivity. So you need to make sure it's easy to access, easy to use, and it's providing the right level of information so that people can get their jobs done. And ultimately, kind of what EMC has delivered here is EMC Documentum Asset Operations. It's based on the industry-leading enterprise content management platform, EMC Documentum. But what we've done is we've built purpose-built user interfaces, workflows, configurations to allow you to manage all the types of information that we've been talking about here. We developed this through our experience working with dozens of different energy companies in the utilities industry, in the oil and gas industry, in the EPC industry, to really understand, what some of the best ways of working on. We've worked with these customers to develop a standard solution that can be very easily configured to match your business objectives. It doesn't require extensive customization. You're not looking at months of custom services work to be able to deploy a system like this. We basically need to stand the system up, configure it to meet your exact organizational requirements, and then you can get going. And it provides some really significant benefits for organizations. It's going to provide consistent document control, as we've talked about. It's going to enable fast access to the most accurate content possible. Because of the change management capabilities we have, you can be assured that information is going to be changed only in a structured way with the right level of review and approval. And ultimately, it's going to drive some significant productivity. Workers are going to be able to get their tasks done much more rapidly because of the quick access to the information that they need. And your plant is going to be more productive because you're going to be able to operate it more effectively. You're going to have the right level of maintenance that's done correctly. You're going to limit the amount of downtime. Almost certainly reduce the amount of safety incidents that occur as a result. So a few key takeaways from today's webinar, and then I will certainly open it up here for some Q&A. But thinking back to the beginning of our presentation, certainly think it's important for you to think about digital transformation. This is something that's happening across all industries, and while the impact might be different depending upon what industry you are, and they're certainly going to be different within the utilities industries, even than it is within the overall energy industry, I think it's important that you take a look at digital transformation, again, on each of those different pillars to make sure that you are considering digital transformation strategies that are going to preserve your organization, actually take it forward over the next several years here instead of being threatened by newcomers. From an information management perspective, I think it's really important to take a look at the level of maturity within your organization. Are you over on the left-hand side of that, or have you really made some considerable strides to better manage your information? And if you are in a really legacy or immature information management stage, take a look at what types of technologies and what steps you can do to improve that, whether it's with our solution or some other solution or just leveraging some basic IT technology. I think there's certainly some steps that you can make to better manage your information and make it available to your organization. And then finally, I think the ultimate value of information management is not so you can measure maturity or claim that you're at some stage of maturity that's higher than you were 2 years ago, but it's ultimately how can I leverage that information management to improve your operational excellence? And as organizations look at operational excellence as a way to drive increased profitability, getting your information management house in order, I think, is really a key step along that way. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and open it up to some questions now, and certainly if you want some additional information or want to continue the conversation after the webcast, I'd be happy to carry the conversation on further. But why don't we go ahead and open it up and see if we have any questions.
Great. Thank you, Sean. That's fantastic information. We do have time for a few questions, and the first one is, we are very interested in enabling our engineers to access information in the field using mobile devices. How do you envision mobility working with systems like the one you describe?
Thank you for the question. I think it's a really good question. It's something that we are increasingly seeing with our clients, with our customers, is very much a desire to leverage mobility to improve the ability to access information. And what we've done with our customers is we actually have developed companion apps for the iPad in this case to be able to access information from within our documented asset operations solution. So essentially what our customers are able to do is they can equip a ruggedized iPad and take it out in the field, and they can have instant access to the information they need. And they can also participate in workflows in that process as well. So it's not just being able to consume information, but potentially, if they notice something that needs to be reported, a field query that they want to make, they can actually input those into the app. Now, not every place you go is going to have the right level of connectivity. So you need to kind of consider, are people always going to be online so they can interact with the system interactively? That's great. But what we've also accounted for is a situation where the iPad is not necessarily an online device out in the field, but potentially it's just a device for being able to read information that has been collected before. So in those cases, an engineer that has a work order can pull up the documents on their iPad. They can be downloaded locally so that when you take that iPad out in the field, you have the ability to access that information. But then what you can also do is if you have field queries or other information you want to contribute into the system, that can be done on the iPad app, and then once you get back into a connected situation, those workflows can be initiated at that point, given the information you've already input. So, I think this is an area that's still in a pretty nascent stage. We have a lot of interest, and maybe not as much clear direction in terms of the way people want to leverage this situation. And certainly connectivity is a bit of a mixed bag, so it's not always clear exactly how interactive the situation can be. But I think there's certainly an opportunity to leverage mobile devices, and we certainly have some customers that are doing that today.
Fantastic. We actually only have time for one more question. This is one. We have a variety of business and information systems today, but how does adding another system to manage documents simplify things for our engineers and other workers that need to access these documents?
Yeah, again, another really, really good question. I think it kind of goes back to a point I made earlier about user adoption. Ultimately, any of these technology investments we make are pointless unless we can get our users to benefit from using them. And so, I would certainly agree with anyone that says that adding another information management system or adding any other business system just for the sake of solving a specific problem may not always be the best strategy. But I think, again, if you look at this in the context of how important information is to the rest of the business and how that information ties into other business processes, I think you can get some real value out of a system like this. Integration with work order management systems so that people don't have to go into multiple systems to be able to get the information they need. Integration with ERP so that, again, the information that the ERP system is managing in terms of managing the value chain, managing the supply chain, I think that's all really critical. But if you have that additional information accessible within that system, or you have the ability to share information between those two systems, that's where you really get value out of adding new capabilities. And it's also where you're able to prove that value to the workers that need to be able to access that content. I think that ultimately drives that level of user adoption and value to your organization, most importantly.
Thank you, Sean. On behalf of Penn Energy and Penwell Corporation, I would like to thank you, Sean Baird, Director of Industry Marketing with Dell EMC, and also our sponsor, Dell EMC, for today's presentation. This presentation will be archived within 24 hours and can be accessed from the homepage at www.pennenergy.com. A reminder email message for the archive will be sent to all registrants, complete with a direct link to the archive. Thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to serving you with future webcasts.